Hi everyone. I know you were expecting to see Nia, but today I am your host. Hi, I'm Kayla Clark, and on this segment of Elevate with Nia is all about having conversations pertaining to professional and personal growth. Today's special guest is someone who one would say life is comparable to a movie. She had to defy all the odds that were against her. Stay tuned as we gain more insight in the life of Jennifer Ramirez. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, and how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be doing this interview with you.
Just gonna jump right into it. So, an interesting fact, right, is that you help survivors with abuse get rid of their emotional baggage. So, where did this passion come from? Where did it arrive from? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so um, I was sexually abused when I was 7 by my father. So because of that, I already had boundary issues with physical boundaries, my physical boundaries being crossed at a young age, and then on top of it I was told to keep my abuse a secret. So then I was taught that my voice didn't matter at a very young age. So I grew up to be this person with no boundaries, and I was very scared and timid and very unsure of myself, had really low self-esteem ever since a child, and that just kind of progressed as I got older. I became a single mom at the age of 21. And as soon as I told him I was pregnant, he took off. And I was left on my own, basically to fend for myself with my daughter. And that really was one of the hardest times of my life, was like trying to figure that out, figuring out who I was at 21, then bring a baby into the mix and having to, go to work and
Yeah.
raise her by myself. It was a lot. And it was really, really hard. And that was essentially when I hit rock bottom. I also was very poor. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was $25,000 in credit card debt. And that really took a toll on me because it was hard. Just being a single mom was hard. And then having to worry about money and not having enough and not being just having enough for anything that we wanted. Like there was never anything left. Like after all the bills and the rent was paid, there was just nothing left. And that was really tough, for me. And even when we would go to the store with my daughter, she'd ask me for things and I always had to tell her no because I couldn't afford, the candy. And, it's
Yeah.
only $1, but that those dollars counted so much back then. Um, and so I hit a really tough time, and I was also in toxic relationships. I was dating, bad people because I was in this cycle of dating narcissistic men. My dad was a narcissist, so I ended up in that cycle, and I was just in really toxic relationships. Got to the point I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how did I get here? And I was like, I need to start doing something different, because every decision I had made wasn't, yeah, I had went through trauma, but my parents weren't making those decisions for me as adults. Like I had to learn that I was making those decisions and they weren't very good. So what was I going to do to make it different? So I started going to therapy. I started reading self-help books, and I started learning a lot about myself and understanding why I was making those decisions. And it was due to the trauma that I went through when I was younger that I had never addressed, and that's actually how I got into the work that I do now, just because of everything that I went through. I remember thinking like I was by myself. I remember feeling alone and like nobody understood me or understood where I was coming from. And then when I started doing the work that I'm doing now, I saw like there's so many women that deal with, not just, trauma, but just issues as women. And we just don't talk about it because we tend to put ourselves last and everyone else first. And we just don't talk about these issues. Basically, everything that I had went through was basically what drove me to start a nonprofit to help female trauma survivors and helping single moms, because I know what it's like to be in those positions and feel like you're going to be stuck there forever and be poor forever or suffer forever. And that's just not true. So now I just share my story and I do the work that I do, helping trauma survivors, whether that's through the nonprofit side of things or through coaching them. Because I know what it's like to feel like you're never going to heal, or you're always going to be stuck, or you're always going to be unhappy and depressed and anxious. Just sharing my story, letting them know that your trauma doesn't define you. It's just a part of your story. It's not your entire story. And you have to, if you want to change in your life, you're going to have to do some hard work, but it's definitely worth it, because happiness is is possible after, you're going through a traumatic event. You just have to do the work. It's just not going to happen in the snap of a finger. It's trauma, unfortunately, is something that's you have to work every single day and just be conscious and self-aware of the decisions you're making, the things that you're experiencing. And it's okay to feel sad and mad and all that stuff, but just not staying stuck there. Because I ended up stuck in that like depressive state where I blamed everyone else, and I just, I was always the victim. I was in victim mode for years and years, and I was just stuck. So I don't want other women to stay stuck like I did for as long as I did. So that's what motivated me to do the work that I do. And just, I'm really passionate about helping women heal and just be whatever it is that they want to be, or, just helping them get there. So
at the age of 21, I am 21.
Right, I know.
So hearing you say 21, I'm just like, 21. Tell me about that time in your life at the age of 21 where did you receive judgment?
Oh yeah. Especially, coming from, I'm Hispanic, I'm Mexican. So our families are, you're taught that you have to get married. And I was the only one in my family that wasn't married. I have two sisters, they were both married, and I was the only one that was a single mom. So I always felt like I was kind of looked upon as less than them because I didn't have that husband or the, whatever, even any guy around really. So I did feel like judgment, yes. Especially from like, coworkers when people found out I was pregnant. 21 is not like 16 young, but it's still young. And so they knew that, me and my kid's dad, like, were kind of on and off. So I think there was more judgment there. Like, wow, you're going to have a kid with someone who's basically not really good. And, for me, it wasn't really, there was no option. I just knew that this was something that a situation I had gotten myself into. I wasn't careful. So like abortion and all that stuff wasn't really even an option for me. It was just, I maybe thought about it for a week, and then I was like, no, this is something that I did. I wasn't careful. So now I have to deal with what comes with it. And of course I didn't really think he would leave me, but it happened the way it was supposed to. I learned a lot about myself, and being a single mom, especially when she was a baby, was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but it's made me also like very resilient. And like, if I could do that, raise a kid by myself, and she's great, like I could do anything else, because that was, being a parent is really hard, especially when you're doing it by yourself. It's like 10 times harder. So there was definitely judgment, which used to make me feel less than. And I think that was contributed to my self-esteem issues that I had already had. And now, people were looking down on me for other things. And so, I think it definitely took a toll on me.
Were there any concerns when your parents found out that you're pregnant at such a young age? Were there any concerns at all?
Well, I was already out of the house at that time. I moved out when I was 19, so I was already on my own. So I don't think it was that big of a deal for them. I think like, I know my mom was disappointed, and my dad didn't really say much, but I had a funny relationship with the both of them. But I was already on my own. The people that I cared most about that were my grandparents. I remember telling them, and I was in tears because I knew I had disappointed them, because they wanted me to graduate from college and do other things with myself, and that's not what they wanted for me. So I was really like, I felt really bad, kind of like letting them down, so but other than that, nobody really said anything, but it was because I was on my own already. So I think that changed the dynamic. I think if I was living at home still, it would have been a bigger deal. For sure.
Okay, so you mentioned about going to college and stuff. Did you still continue going to school even though you were pregnant? Did you continue school?
No. So I actually dropped out a couple times, believe it or not. I dropped out. So I dropped out the first time because I didn't want to go to school. That was when I was a really crazy party girl. This is, so all I wanted to do was party and hang out and do stupid things. And that's why I was like, I don't want to go to school. Like, I want to go have fun and work. So I chose to work. And then I got pregnant, and then I tried going back to school when she was like less than a year old. And it was so hard because, when they're babies, they require so much attention. and so much of your time. So it's just hard for me to study. And so I dropped out. And then I tried going back when she was like 3 or 4, and it was still, she needed tons of attention from me, and still, I still had to like help her with a lot of things. So I dropped out again, and I didn't start going again until she turned 7. And when she turned 7, I took it completely seriously. She was a little bit more independent. She did used to bother me a lot still. I'd be like, let me study, give me 20 minutes with silence, and it would last 2 minutes, and she'd be like, mommy, look at this, or so. But then but it was easier because she was a little bit older, a little more self-sufficient for herself. And after that, I went to school part-time while working full-time and while raising her full-time. So I just graduated last May, finally, with my bachelor's degree after many years. I graduated with my associates in 2017, and last year I graduated with my bachelor's. So it took a long time, but I finished eventually. So, and it was because school was very important to me. It was something that I had started, and it meant a lot to me when I decided to start college. And then, I dropped out because I was kind of crazy, and then I tried. And so I knew that was something I wanted to do for myself, not just myself, but my daughter, because I knew she was watching me, and I want her to go to college and get herself educated. So I have to lead by example. So that was the main reason I decided to go back, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, but also show her, like, look, like, just because you're a single mom or whatever the case, like, doesn't mean that's a good excuse not to finish something you say you're going to do. And that can be anything, not just school. But for me personally, school was really important for me in finishing it,
Yes. How did you balance? Because you mentioned earlier about toxic relationships. How did you balance the toxic relationships, single motherhood, going to school? How do you balance all of that at such a young age?
So I wasn't in school when I was in the toxic relationships, for the most part, because the type of people I was around had no like type of education like that. So, but until I hit like my mid-20s, I did start going back to school, like I said, when she was a little bit older. But I was in another toxic relationship, and he was actually in school too, so he was a student as well. But it was always, he was a narcissist as well. So his schooling was always way more important than mine. He always used to make it seem, because he was going to school to be a physical therapist, and he was just like, oh, yours isn't as hard as mine. He always used to devalue my work, and always his was more important because he was going to be a doctor, and I was just getting my associate's degree at the time, so it was like, your stuff isn't that important. So that, of course, used to take a toll on me, because he used to make me feel like, I was still working full time and still, like, had my daughter, and, just when somebody you care about is telling you like your stuff is not that important, it does start to feel like, well, maybe it's not, but yeah, so it was hard to navigate that, because he was very toxic. He was always angry about something, on top of him being a narcissist, he was bipolar too, so his moods were always changing, and I had to deal with that, and it was a lot of stress on me. Plus I was still working full time, and so I had to go deal with work stuff, and then come home and deal with the crazy stuff, and then school. And yeah, and I remember too, like, when it was my time to study, he would never respect my time to study. He would study in the middle of the night when I was sleeping, but I would need to study obviously when I was awake. And so he would always want me to spend time with him when I was supposed to be studying. So I feel like he was like almost like trying to sabotage me. Now that I'm looking back at it, I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back, I think he tried to do that. Yeah.
Okay, how did you find your path? Going through all of that, what motivated you to just get up on it and just say, you know what, I can't take this anymore. It's time for me to do better for myself, for my daughter. What motivated you?
Yeah. So definitely was with him. Like I said, it was very toxic, and it just was a big fight one day. One day we had a really big fight. Things got a little out of hand, and excuse me, and that was basically the night that I decided, like, this is it, because I had finally, after so much of the abuse, I finally had like a light bulb moment. He had said something to me. He blamed, something happened, and he had blamed me, and he was like, what do you have to say for yourself? And then I was like, it just finally, the light bulb went off, and it was like, this person does not respect me. He does not like value me. He doesn't see any, and that was kind of where I was like, let's take I told him, like, I need the night for myself. Why don't you go to your parents' house? And it just started out like that. Like, I thought that I just needed a break to think on things. And, like I said, the fight we had was very like, it turned physical. So I was like, I need a night to myself. And then that first night he was gone, I felt like the biggest weight off of my shoulders. I was like, oh my God, it feels so peaceful in my own house. Like I haven't felt peace in my own home in a long time.
Yeah.
And then as the days went on,
Yeah.
I felt happier and like lighter every day that he wasn't there. And that was kind of how I knew, like, I'm not supposed to be with this person. And then, after about a week of him being out of the house, I basically told him I'm done. And he basically had told me, like, if I would have known you were done, I would have never left. And then, he did other things to kind of keep me in control. He wouldn't give me back my house keys. He wouldn't let me see, we had a dog together. Wouldn't let me see the dog. Just did a lot of things like that to kind of keep control over me.
Mm-hmm.
And then after him, I actually decided to stay single. I didn't, date for almost 3 years because I was like so traumatized and like, I was like, let me just focus on myself. And so I did, and that was life-changing because I had always had a relationship or somebody, there was always somebody in my, so that was the first time I actually took the time to like be by myself and be okay with being in my own company, because I wasn't okay with that. I had always had issues being alone. I always had to be around a friend or a boyfriend or whoever. So once I like really got comfortable with being by myself, I like just discovered a lot of things about myself. I started discovering things I liked about myself, things I wanted out of a partner in the future. And I was like, I'm not going to settle for less. Like, I'm awesome. It just made me realize like all the great things about me, and I learned to love myself by being alone. And that was life-changing. It really helped me a lot. And then, then I met, somebody that I'm with now, and he's a great guy, and he treats me really good. I always knew that I wanted somebody that was going to like worship the ground that I walked on, treat me like a queen, because I was like, I'm a queen and I want somebody to treat me like that. And if they don't treat me like that, I don't want them. I'd rather just be by myself. And I did. And, he's a great guy. I have a really good, it's actually a partnership, and it's not just me doing. I've always been in relationships where it was one-sided. I was always the one that loved more or that did more, did all the work, and like supported them. And now it's actually a partnership, so it's very healthy and nice to be around somebody that has the same ambitions and goals as me, and want the same things out of life. And it's been good. So yeah.
Did you find it hard to leave, seeing that you're so used to this type of treatment? Did you find it hard to leave?
Not the last one, but previous relationships. Yeah, like it was hard for me to leave my kid's dad. He had cheated on me so many times and treated me terribly. And, a serious relationship I had after him, it was toxic, but we were always going back and forth, playing the make-up breakup game. So I clearly had issues, with not sticking to what I said I was going to do and going back. But with my last narcissistic relationship, didn't do the back and forth. It was basically, I kind of had learned my lesson from the past to not do that. But yeah, so I did have issues with that prior, not being able to just let go or being lonely. That was the main thing. When I got lonely, I'd be like, well, it's just, I'd rather be with them than be by myself. And that was obviously a big issue.
Yeah.
and that goes back to me not being okay with being alone. That was part of that. So
I know that you were selling drugs. Do you want to tell me about that?
Yeah, it was very short. It was a short period of time. I would say I was doing that for like 2 months, and then I got pregnant. So to me, that was God's way of saying, calm down, little girl. You're being too crazy. I know that. That's a fact. I know I was going down a very dangerous path. It was just weed. It was nothing crazy, right? But like, if I would have started to make good money off of that, I know I would have progressed to other things, because I was crazy back then. Or care plans of the things that I did. So that's why I started doing that. And and then I did also used to go on drug runs with my ex. Like we used to go sell like crack together. I mean, I didn't do it. I would just go with him. So I was basically an accomplice, right? But like things again that now I look back and I'm like, wow, how stupid was that? Like if we would have gotten caught, I could have gone to jail too, but again, I was young and just dumb and didn't have any boundaries for myself or other people. So I kind of just used to go with the flow. But yeah, so it was short-lived as far as me doing it, because then I ended up pregnant, and that was the main reason why I stopped, because I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore, But yeah, and I do, that's why like my daughter came into my life, because she really calmed me down and made me view the world in a different way, because now I had somebody that depended on me. I couldn't do those reckless things because
Anymore.
there's consequences. If she didn't have me, who would she have, you know? So I definitely was a little bit more careful after I had her.
Great, great, great. So you went through all of this. You brought me back to childhood, 21-year-old Jennifer, got pregnant, selling drugs, moved out on her own by the age of 19,
Mm.
19, and then now you're accomplishing so much. So tell me about this Jennifer now. Tell me about the new and improved
Yeah.
2.0 Jennifer.
2.0.
I want to hear
I
all
like
about
that.
it.
Yeah, so I've definitely come a long way in my healing journey. I've gone to, like I mentioned, did the self-help books, I've been just
Yeah,
doing a lot of work on myself. And so I'm in a much better place. I don't think I'm 100% healed. I don't know if I'll ever be there, but I definitely work on myself every day. And so now I have a nonprofit organization, like I mentioned, where we empower women, to be that ultimate version of themselves, no matter what they've been through. So I love the work that I do and helping women through there. So we do like the support groups every week. So helping the women through that and just offering them, support and community. And I just believe in creating community amongst like women, because we as women just go through so many different things. Like, and it's not just trauma involved. Like it could be postpartum depression, childbearing issues, body image issues, like eating disorder. We just deal with so much stuff, but we don't talk about it. And so that's part of like what I want to create, like awareness and education around all these topics that affect us as
yeah.
women. Um, yeah, so now I just help women, like bringing them together and kind of like storytelling, sharing our stories, because you never know by sharing your testimony and your story who it's going to reach, who you're going to touch, whose life could be possibly saved, because somebody could be feeling completely down on themselves today, but if they hear somebody, telling their story saying, hey, I came out of that, then they could get a little bit of hope in them, like, oh wow, like I thought I was doomed, but there's other people that have been through this too. So that's why I believe in storytelling and just sharing and community and just coming together and talking, as women and just sharing. And then I think I mentioned earlier too, that I am a trauma coach. So I help, survivors of narcissistic abuse or any type of trauma in the past, helping them get rid of their emotional baggage once and for all, so that they can flourish into the person that they were meant to be. So I help my clients with like setting boundaries and forgiveness of other people and themselves, but mainly of themselves, because believe it or not, it's harder for people to forgive themselves than it is other people, because you might have allowed somebody to treat you badly, or you may have allowed somebody to treat you badly too long, or and people get down on themselves, like, why did I stay so long, or why did I let him treat me like that, and things like that. And it's like, it's okay to feel sad or mad around those things, but just not getting stuck in that bad place of like, why me, why me, why me? And moving past it and working on healing and transforming your minds that, everything does happen for a reason. Unfortunately, bad things happen, but at the same time, I totally believe that it's always for a bigger purpose. And we might not know at the moment, but eventually we'll kind of be like, oh, well, that's why. I've had so many moments like that in my life where I'm like, that's why that happened, or that's why I went through that, so many of those moments in my life where I'm like, I know why. I remember I would always ask God, like, why are you doing this to me? Why is it all this stuff always happening to me? Why isn't it doesn't happen to anyone else around me, but it's always me? And I'd be like, why? And now today I know why. Like, I'm meant to do this work. I meant to help women. I was meant to go through all that pain and that struggle to share my story now and to help other women through what they're going through right now. So there's always a bigger purpose for, why things happen. And I'm just in a much better place now. And, I'm definitely on my healing journey still, but I'm definitely happier. My self-esteem is like, definitely better from where I started. I'm definitely more confident in myself, like not just physically, but like internally too. I know the person I am. I'm proud of who I turned out to be, despite all the stuff that I went through, all the mistakes I made, all the things I wasn't proud of, but it all made me into who I am today. So yeah.
So do you regret? Any of the decisions that you made when you were younger?
No, nope. And I used to back then, but now that I'm here today speaking with you, I don't regret anything that I did because, like I said, it made me into who I am today. And had I not maybe made some decisions or a lot of mistakes, maybe I wouldn't be, this person. So I know I had to encounter everything, all the heartaches, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff in order to be, the person that I am. So I don't regret anything.
I must say, Jennifer, your story is inspirational.
Thank you.
Just me, it's inspirational. So I want you. Do you have any advice for a young girl that's probably pregnant right now, going to school? What advice would you give to her, or basically anybody really that's going through something right now? Because you're a trauma coach, you could be going through anything really. What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, don't give up. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of people out there going through it as well, and there are a lot of resources to help you. And that's unfortunately something that I didn't have when I was going through all this stuff. There was not a lot of online stuff and resources like there are now, especially now for single moms and trauma survivors. There wasn't a lot of that out there that I knew of before. So yeah, I would say, if you've been through some sort of trauma, get help for it, whether that be through a therapist, a counselor, or a trauma coach, or, you have to have a good support system behind you because that's key in your healing. And learning to, set boundaries is important as well, and saying no to people if you feel like it's hard to say no, or if people just constantly are always crossing your boundaries, that's definitely something you want to work on and work with a professional on, because that's really important for healing and to being able, know a complete sentence. If you say no, that's, any person that's in your life that really has good intentions towards you and really cares about you, they're going to accept that no, and they're going to say, okay, I won't do that again. Now, if you have people that are constantly pushing past your boundaries and saying, but I did it before, why can't I do it now? Or, things like that, where they're just, oh, why? Or asking you to constantly explain. And, some people are really smart, so they know exactly what you're saying, but they'll just keep asking questions just to mess with you and to make sure that, they're keeping you kind of in that like controlled state, right? Like where you always feel like you have to over explain. So that's another thing to look out for too. And just really accepting what has happened in your past, no matter how unfortunate, no matter how scary or ugly it looks. Accepting that it happened is really important, because sometimes we like to pretend that those things didn't happen because it's too painful to think about that. So some people just pretend like it never happened, and then they repress it and repress it and repress it. Definitely, when you do that, it'll come back eventually in another form, whether that's a health issue, or you end up having like a panic attack when you're like 50 years old. I've had that happen with a lot of my clients where they haven't dealt with an issue, and then it comes up when they're like way older in life, and then they start to remember all the things that they repressed. So that's why it's really good to just go to therapy or counseling or whatever and just take care of it today, because it will come back, unfortunately, whether that, like I said, that in maybe you won't have a panic attack, but maybe you'll get a health issue, because the health issues do come from not dealing with the trauma, right? And just finding a support group. And that's why I really believe in the support groups that I do through the nonprofit, of just being around other people that understand what you're going through, because a lot of the times when we go through things and maybe our friends and family haven't been through the same situation, so sometimes they're not really giving us the best advice, or maybe they're re-triggering us or making us feel worse because they don't know how to help us. So sometimes just being in a room with other people that aren't judging you, aren't trying to say you need to do A, B, and C, or you should get over it already, or why were you drinking so much? Well, that wouldn't have happened if you weren't wearing that clothes, or you were half naked, just those comments that people make. So it's just really awesome to be in a support group where people just aren't talking to you like that, where they're just like, I've been through it too, and here's what I did to get through. And, it's just really, really powerful. Like, I hear just the feedback from the ladies that come, and it's really great feedback that, like, I've been in therapy for years and nothing makes me feel better like coming to this group. And that in and of itself makes me feel like, okay, thank God, like I'm doing something good here. Like my work, the work that we're putting in here is helping people. So that just makes me more passionate. It gives me more drive when I hear that type of feedback, that, wow, like working with you really has helped me, or it's changed my life, and it just helps me to keep going.
Your advice is to don't avoid it, just go through it. Just go through
Yeah,
it.
you have to
Feel
feel it.
emotions and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
and if you can't, if you're trying to go through it and you're finding that it's too much, that's why it's good to have the support group, or good to talk to some, like I said, the therapist, the counselor, the coach, who can help you work through that. Because sometimes it's too overwhelming for people to handle on their own, and they need somebody to kind of guide them through that. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Has the COVID impacted your business? Because I know that some persons are affected with COVID,
Mm-hmm.
mentally. So how has COVID
Yeah.
impacted your business?
It actually was perfect timing, because when we first started the organization, we were heavily focused on professional development. So we're doing a lot of courses for like business women and things like that. Then COVID hit, and I saw how many people, were talking about they're depressed and anxious, myself included. When COVID first happened, I was like having like major like anxiety issues because I was freaked out. I think we all were, it was just scary. Like, this has never happened before. The whole world was shut down. It was freaky. So I actually saw that there was a need to do the support groups, and the support groups came because of COVID, actually. So if COVID wouldn't have been a thing, I probably wouldn't have started the support groups. And so COVID actually was kind of a blessing in disguise as far as like my nonprofit goes, because it allowed us, one, to give this service to women, which I've seen has been very impactful, and for two, it's allowed us to go beyond Illinois and Chicago. So we help women from all over the US, and there's even women that come from out of the country sometimes, so it's allowed us to kind of like broaden our audience to beyond where I currently live. Because if COVID wouldn't have happened, I would have just been focused on Illinois and Chicago. So that was the good thing about it, is that it gave us a little bit more reach. So yeah,
It's nice to know that COVID has impacted somebody positively and not so negatively. So where can our viewers reach you?
Yeah, so if you would like to reach me, you can contact me directly. My email, it's jennifer@womenrisechicago.org. Or you can visit our website. It's www.womenrisechicago.org. If you want, if you're curious about the coaching side of things, I work with people one-on-one, and I do group coaching as well. And I also do different coaching events where I call them the guided peer sessions. So it's basically like a mastermind, but more of like on the personal development side of things. If you would like to ask about that, or even check that out, visit the other website. It's www.andflourish, so andflourish.com. And you can contact me directly through there or through the other email address that I already provided. So yeah.
Great. And in the beginning, you mentioned that Nia contacted you in Clubhouse. Your Clubhouse, right? Your room in Clubhouse. What's it called?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, the internet's kind of funny. So yes, the club on Clubhouse is called Women Supporting Women. So feel free to add us, or you can add me on Clubhouse, and it's I have it at Boss Jenny.
As I was saying, that Nia and I had a little segment on Women Support Women. We spoke about that we're placed in certain situations for a reason, and we might not see why now, but probably in the next 5 years or 10 years, we'll know why. And it is so funny that you mentioned, when I asked you the question if you have any regrets, and you said no. And then you told me how, back then you were like, why did this happen to me? And then now you're realizing that, oh, this is why it had to happen. So it is so funny now how you're basically just saying that, and we had a whole segment in Women Support Women about it. So Jennifer, I just want to say thank you so much. It has been an honor.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, this was fun
to interview. So there you have it, everybody. This is Jennifer Ramirez. We went through her journey. She spoke about what she went through when she was young, and how she got pregnant young, and she was selling drugs. And now she's successful, and now she gone back to school. She got back her degree and everything. So I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out today to,
of course,
be interviewed. And everybody, there you have it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And we are also on 7 podcast platforms. So we're not only on YouTube anymore, we're also on any podcast platform. And thank you so much again, Jennifer, for taking the time out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All
Of
right.
course.